Today's video is brought to you by Third Wave Water. So there's this movement in espresso that is saying the entire industry has standardized the wrong basket size when it comes to espresso machines. 58 millimeters, the size of basket that comes in almost every pro level espresso machine, may actually make worse espresso. We'll talk about why in a minute, but what are people doing about it? They're going out and they're buying $100, $200, $300, $400, sometimes even more on aftermarket baskets and upgrade kits to convert basically their 58 millimeter espresso machines into 49 millimeter espresso machines. And along with that comes new tampers, new puck screens, new accessories, all to retrofit machines that were never actually designed to use that basket size in the first place. And machine manufacturers haven't really jumped the gun on this and said, hey, maybe we should develop a 49 millimeter version of our 58 millimeter machines until Flair released this. Now, if you look at basically all conventional wisdom until relatively recently, you could say that this machine shouldn't even exist at all. 58 millimeters is what we should shoot for, and that's the pinnacle. This, however, is the Flair 49 Pro. This unit was sent to me by the Flair team, and to understand why this actually matters, we need a little bit of context. If you've spent any amount of time in espresso communities over the last couple of years, it's likely you've seen this conversation. Deeper pucks, coarser grinds, more even extractions, better flavor. The idea is pretty simple, actually. You put the same amount of coffee in a 49 millimeter basket instead of a 58 millimeter, and you end up with a thicker, taller, and narrower puck as opposed to a thinner, flatter, more pancake-shaped puck in 58 millimeters. Now, in a basket like this, because your layer of coffee is so much thinner, you really are kind of riding a little bit of a knife edge in terms of your grind size, your quality, your puck distribution, all of that. If you start to get channeling in this thin little puck, things can go sideways a lot more quickly. This takes some of that away. You get the thicker puck. You can grind a little bit more coarsely to get the same level of resistance. Runaway channeling is a little bit less likely, and you end up with a very sweet, good, and more forgiving dial-in. Now, lever espresso enthusiasts have actually been saying this for a long time. You know, there's several lever espresso machines that are very popular and have smaller sized baskets, but it's only just recently that the broader espresso community has sort of latched on to this idea. And with that, you start to see all these smaller companies kind of jumping in and trying to meet that increased demand for these types of accessories that will modify a 58 millimeter machine, which is the most popular design out there, into the 49 millimeter format. You have the S-Works billet step-down baskets coming in at a couple $100. There's Introvert Makes, a Canadian guy that makes these things. You have an option available from Normcore, a company called Graph as well. And then also from S-Works, you actually have these entire group conversion kits that really kind of more permanently change your espresso machine into this format. You know, all of them are pretty clever in their own way, but when you really look at them, they're all sort of workarounds, and they all have compromises to the way that they work and the impact that they have on your espresso. It's not really from the ground up solution. Flair kind of was tuned into this landscape and very smartly said, hey, why don't we just make a machine that does this? And if you know the Flair line at all, you know that this is a little bit of a departure for them. You know, they're pretty famous for their removable, kind of modular, proprietary group basket setup. This is a more traditional portafilter that they have with the 49 Pro that is actually a lot more reminiscent of their Flair 58 and the Flair 58 Plus 2. Now, one of the big advantages of Flair 58 is not just the industry standard basket size, but that you can use any industry standard size accessory with their portafilter and baskets. And the 49 Pro does the same thing in the 49 millimeter standardized format. So that means that it opens the door to a lot of 49 millimeter accessories with a couple caveats. The way the gasket and portafilter is designed, the basket has a flat top, so you're going to be limited to accessories that use that style of gasket seal. The S-Works design basket is a good example. If you get something like an IMS basket that has a rounded top, it will fit in the portafilter, but you won't be able to lock it in. Things like tampers, WD-T tools, and certain baskets are no problem. Now, the 49 Pro also comes with what's called a pressurized basket, and this is what Flair recommends actually starting with, especially if you're a beginner. You can grind even more coarsely with this, and the basket itself will regulate the pressure so that you don't need to fine-tune the grind as much. It also comes with a dosing funnel, which is pretty nice. This little tamper here, and a dispersion screen, as well as a drip tray and a little gauge that screws into the top of the group here, very much like the Flair 58. Now, a couple things that I want to point out here. When you look at this thing, it actually just does look a lot like a Flair 58, just a little bit smaller. It's got the same overall frame design. It's got the same wood kind of crossways handle on here. It's got very similar design language when it comes to the group up here. One thing that I do really like on here is the way that they've designed this latch mechanism. Based on the Flair 58 models that I have, I actually prefer the way that they've designed the latch on the 49 Pro. I think it's a little bit of an improvement there. The group up here is insulated with silicone. We'll talk about performance in just a minute here. And there is no preheat module on here, so you can't plug this in and let it warm up like you can with some of the Flair 58 models. Overall, the build quality feels pretty solid, so I think we should make a cup of coffee with this thing. But first, I want to talk about one other thing: water. I'm going to be brewing a Guatemalan here that we roast at our roastery project, Got Coffee Co. And when you talk about prerequisites for great brewing, coffee is always the first thing that people talk about. You got to have good coffee. Water is the thing that fewer people talk about. This stuff is called Third Wave Water, and they're sponsoring today's video. They are a great support on the channel, and I really like this stuff. Basically, what you do with it is you take a little packet of the stuff and you add one of these packets to a gallon of distilled water. Now, if you've ever drank your tap water and you've not liked the taste, that's because there's other things in the water that make it taste that way, make it taste bad. And when you make coffee with that water, that taste doesn't go away, it just gets blended in with your coffee. And Third Wave Water is designed to fix all of that. It's a specific formulation that is designed to flatter and maximize the flavor of your coffee. The stuff is a huge upgrade, and I love recommending it. Now, the team at Third Wave Water gives all of my viewers here on the channel 10% off a one-time order using the link down there in the description. All that being said, let's make some coffee. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to preheat the Flair. And this is something that is maybe not the sexiest part of the workflow with this thing, but it is something I would recommend, especially if you're working with lighter roasted coffees. Basically, what they recommend is to fill up the group head here with boiling water, and you're going to leave it for about 45 seconds, and you're going to put a cup underneath the bottom there. And once you get to that 45-second mark, all you're going to do is you're just going to lift the lever and let the water drain out into that cup. Now, you can brew at this point, but if you want to get to full stability, Flair recommends doing an additional round of preheating. So I'm going to put that water in here now as well. Now we're going to grind up this Guatemalan. I'm going to prepare my puck. So I'm going to put this little dosing funnel on here, and I'm going to drop my beans into that basket. Give it a little distribute with the WD-T tool, little spirograph motions here. And then once you have an even distribution, I'm just going to give it a little tap, and then we can tamp it down here with this. Now, this isn't a self-leveling tamper, so you're going to want to make sure that you try and press it down as level as you can. And then I'm going to drop the dispersion screen right there on the top. Now, before we lock the portafilter in, I'm just going to drain that additional preheat water out of the system here, and then we'll lock in our portafilter. We'll refill with boiling water, and I'm just going to fill right up to the top of the metal chamber here, and then I'll lift up the arm, which drops the water into that chamber. So at this point, I'm going to start bringing the arm down slowly. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to watch the underside of my basket using a little mirror here. Now the 49 Pro doesn't come with a mirror like the Flair 58, but I do notice they have a little magnetic thing there where you could add the same mirror just as an upgrade. All right, and we have about 42 output there with a full plunge. Now we'll talk more about that in a minute, but let's see how this tastes. That is a really nice, sweet, smooth espresso shot. Now, when it comes to workflow, it's basically what you would expect and very comparable to the Flair 58 with the exception of the preheating. You fill the basket, tamp it, lock in your portafilter, pull the arm down, watch the pressure on this little gauge here. And you have full control over the pressure profile, which is something I really like. You can save a ton of shots that way. If it's flowing too quickly, you just drop the arm more slowly, and even if it doesn't hit as high of pressure, the chances are pretty good that you're going to end up with a tasty shot. And conversely, if it's flowing too slowly, you can just let it pre-infuse for a little longer and then pull the arm down. The shot may run a little long, but again, the odds are pretty good that what you get is going to at least be drinkable. So manual levers overall, I'm a big fan. Now, when I did some temperature tests on this, I did find that medium light especially, and light roast definitely recommend doing the preheating. And unlike the Flair Pro 3, where you can actually take the whole group off and like preheat it over a kettle or in boiling water or something like that, you can't do that with this. So not necessarily the most elegant. And at some point in the future, even just looking at the way that this is designed, I would not be at all surprised if they make an electric version of this in the future. That being said, if you follow their mode of operation, the espresso that comes out is really quite good. I'm grinding quite a bit coarser than I would on a 58mm machine, and I'm getting great body, great sweetness, and the espresso just feels really good. A couple notes on volume though. With that 18-gram dose of coffee, with this coffee in particular, I got just over 40 mils of output. That's just over a 1-to-2 ratio. If you put in 20 grams of coffee, that definitely is moving squarely into a 1-to-2. And even with that, I do find that occasionally with the way this valve is, sometimes when you're lowering it down, some water kind of comes up through the valve before it seals fully. And then you kind of have to lift it up for a sec and let the water go back in, and then it will have the full volume of water underneath that valve. And that's where I saw the roughly 42 mils output on an 18-gram dose. Now, if you want to go higher than that, say to like a 1-to-3 or whatever, you can do like a Fellini style pull. It's basically you pull it, push it down part way, and then once you're already depressed, you lift it up again to let air into the chamber so that you have more headroom to push down. I was able to get up to pretty close to 60 mil output. I'm going to say it's not an ideal workflow because it does open you up to the possibility of disrupting the puck, but it is possible if you want to do that. Now, here's the really interesting thing to me about this whole picture though. Think about the whole response to this 49mm phenomenon. The community kind of wakes up to the fact that 49mm baskets have some pretty attractive advantages. You have all these ancillary products kind of cropping up, you know, step down baskets, even whole conversion kits for very expensive machines. And at the end of the day, you're still going to have what is basically a 58mm machine with a 49mm basket wedged inside. If you go with a step down solution, you're dealing with extra headspace, compatibility issues with accessories, and a workflow that the machine you're probably using wasn't actually really designed for in the first place. The 49 Pro was designed for 49mm from the ground up. You know, you're not dealing with extra headspace caused by step down. You can get the 49mm stuff, and it's going to give you a good, consistent result. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it took that long for somebody to get there. You know, the demand is clearly there. You know, people have developed and iterated on these very elaborate conversion kits for very expensive machines to get this result. This is not an overly complicated machine. The demand was there. The science was there. The lived experience of enthusiasts was there. Somebody just needed to step in and give those people a machine that they were looking for. A couple things I don't love about this though. The preheating is definitely a drawback. You know, don't love that. It's kind of annoying to do. To me, I would say that an electric version will be coming at some point, and it would almost be nice if that was just available today. Also, the ratio thing is a little bit of a limitation. You know, people who are experimenting with this kind of nerdy stuff, very often they're doing light coffees. They want to do longer ratios, and there is a cap with this. I think both of those things can be worked around, though. A couple other really small things. The inclusion of a shot mirror would have been a really nice add on this. Also, the dispersion screen. When you take this out, you got this little metal screen hanging on here, and you got to kind of figure out your own little method for getting that thing out of there to clean it without knocking the whole puck out. It's not the end of the world, but if they had just had a little magnet or something that came with it that you could stick in and kind of pull the screen out, that would have been a nice workflow add. The silicone pieces, you know, around the group here and around this gauge, Flair uses this on the Flair 58 as well. And I find that it's a little bit of like a dust magnet, and it's kind of hard to keep clean. That may be down to my kind of things that tweak me in the wrong way, but it is something that I do notice about this material. And lastly, you know, this drip tray here. They do metal drip trays or silicone drip trays with some of their other products. And I just find that this drip tray, it looks kind of ugly to me. You know, it really shows the coffee. When I first pulled this out, I thought, is there actually another piece that is designed to go on top of here? It just doesn't look finished or cohesive with the rest of the 49 Pro look. None of those things is a deal breaker, but they are all things that could be refined over time. One thing that could be a deal breaker for you is the way that they've designed this portafilter with this flat lip combined with the gasket in here. You know, depending on how and which accessories you want to try mixing and matching, that may make a couple things more difficult or not possible for what you want to do. On where it's actually made, Flair does all their manufacturing in China. They have worked with basically the same factory since really they started. So there's a long relationship there with Flair and making these things. They didn't give me any specific notes about labor guidelines, aside to say, you know, we follow safe labor practices, give our people holidays, no child labor, any of that kind of stuff. And they're at the factory often. So I'll leave Flair's full statement on that down there in the description. You can check that out if you want to dig in on that detail. I think if you want electric preheat and no fuss, this is probably not the best for you, at least not yet. You know, if that is a real priority, you can, maybe it's not ideal, but you can still get a 58 with a step down basket. One thing with any manual lever is you're going to need a separate milk steaming solution. So Flair makes their Wizard, which is quite nice. You can get the nano foamer as well, but these machines won't steam milk on their own either. So if you're doing a lot of milk steaming, that's something else to bear in mind as a part of your overall consideration. It actually does add a pretty significant amount of extra workflow to making a drink with one of these things. But if you're entering the 49 millimeter ecosystem fresh, or if you're upgrading from like a Flair Pro 2 or a Pro 3 and you want to get into 49 millimeter, pretty compelling option. A lot more affordable than a Flair 58, uses standardized accessories. And I think for a lot of people, this is a product that maybe they've been waiting for, and they're happy to jump into a 49 millimeter ecosystem. Now, I want to hear from you on this one. If you've been considering this shift, would you jump to a purpose-built machine, or are you going to try modding your current machine first? Let me know in the comments. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you on the next one.